A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. With that, I'll hand it over to Minister of Finance, Selina Robinson.
Thank you and good afternoon. And I'd like to begin my remarks by acknowledging that I'm speaking from the territory of the Lekwungen peoples, the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations, and my gratitude to the nations and to everyone joining us today as we announce a new protection measure for homebuyers here in British Columbia. Today we have established the framework for a home buyer protection period in BC, a first of its kind. We know that the housing market here in British Columbia is one of the most competitive in the country. British Columbians trying to buy a home in these market conditions are frustrated in the face of unbalanced risk in the marketplace. Too often, buyers are feeling forced to submit no conditions offers just to have a chance in a multiple bid situation. And we've all seen the stories about people who are under a sense of duress forego inspections and then face major unexpected repair and renovation costs because they found something really wrong after they made their purchase. People need to have protection as they make one of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. A home buyer protection period is about improving consumer protection and balancing the risk in the marketplace. We've introduced enabling legislation today because we know that the status quo is only working for people who profit from an overheated market. Specific regulations about how a home buyer protection period can work in BC are coming later this year and will be informed by all that we have heard from at-risk homebuyers and by BC Financial Services Authority consultations with those working in the real estate sector. Today, we will have the chance to hear directly from some people who work in the sector. And I'm pleased that lenders from the mortgage industry and the home inspection industry will join us to share their perspectives. This legislation is about giving government the tools to protect those at the most risk in the current market, without causing undue harm to sellers and those working in the real estate industry. We know that one of the most important protections a home buyer has is an expert opinion on the condition of the home they are looking at buying. A home inspection provides due diligence and peace of mind, but the speed of transactions in a competitive market can put buyers in a position where they don't feel like they have the time to adequately evaluate the property. Helen Barton is the Executive Director of BC's Home Inspectors Association and joins us from Kelowna today to share her thoughts on providing buyers more time. Helen?
Good afternoon, everyone, and I want to thank Minister Robinson for inviting me to speak on behalf of the Home Inspectors Association BC and our members and their clients. BC's regulation of the home inspection industry in 2009 gave homebuyers greater confidence. We are very pleased to see our current government taking further steps with this new initiative. And once again, British Columbia will lead the country in protecting homebuyers by providing them with the right to exercise due diligence before purchasing a home. In a normal, balanced real estate market, homebuyers can have financing and inspection conditions in their contracts without them tainting the offer. We hope this new legislation will ensure the same protections to homebuyers in any market condition. After the last heated real estate boom in 2016, I received countless calls from disappointed purchasers who had skipped the home inspection. Major and costly issues such as structure, mold, leaking roofs, and unsafe electrical became apparent after taking possession of their new homes. One Lower Mainland couple with a young child moved in only to move right back out again. Their new home was not livable or safe. They had paid well over what they had hoped to spend when they bought the house, and they found themselves in devastating circumstances. Other buyers are forced to rely on pre-listing home inspection reports, usually found on the kitchen counter for them to scan during a house viewing. A pre-listing inspection is conducted for the seller, and buyers need to be very cautious. The inspector has no obligation to the buyer. In the event of an error or omission, buyers have no recourse on the inspector. Conditions may have changed since the report was prepared, and buyers are not privy to any on-site conversations between the inspector and the seller. In many cases, the buyers will not even be aware of what is included in the seller's inspection. Unless the inspector belongs to a professional home inspection association that dictates and oversees a scope of inspection, each inspector can define their own scope, which may not be included in the report. We all know real estate is buyer beware, but is that fair when consumers are not allowed to practice due diligence due to heated market conditions? It should be the right of every BC consumer to have an inspection performed by the inspector of his or her choice. The Home Inspectors Association BC wholeheartedly agrees with the BC government that new legislation is essential for consumer protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Helen. And we've heard numerous times about the pressures and stress that come with trying to find a new home and the financial risks people face making significant decisions in that context. We need to make sure that the right measures are in place to help protect people's interests whenever they look to make one of the largest financial decisions of their lives. Our final speaker today is focused on the financial side of the equation. Paul Taylor is the President and CEO of Mortgage Professionals Canada and joins us today from Toronto to talk about the benefits of providing buyers more time to obtain financing. Paul?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd actually first like to thank Minister Robinson for taking the concerns of home buyers in BC to heart. As she's outlined, many purchasers have felt the pressure of the heated housing activity we've all been experiencing through recent memory. Mortgage Professionals Canada's member broker and mortgage sub-broker members have identified one class of purchaser to be particularly at risk, and as has been described already, the frustrated buyers who are potentially overextending themselves through what they consider to be necessity, having lost bids on numerous properties already, and growing desperate for a place for their family to live while also becoming weary of the buying and bidding process. It's these British Columbians that can create problems not only for themselves, but also for the home seller. And without a structured short cooling off period to withdraw from an offer that on reflection, the seller is unable to realistically manage. And now with a legally binding agreement in place, often long and complicated legal processes are required to exit the transaction. The would-be buyer has generally, as a minimum, lost the entirety of the deposit, and the seller's relisting can infer to other potential purchasers that there are structural or other issues with the home that caused the prior transaction to fail, making it more difficult to sell. Mortgage Professionals Canada is supportive of a short cooling off period to avoid exactly these difficulties. As a bit of an aside, we also recommend all purchasers are mindful of the changing interest rate environment that we're in and include a financial condition on any offers to purchase a home they make. Qualification for mortgage loan is likely to continue to become harder in the coming months. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. We're certainly in favor of the legislation and the opportunity to create some additional protections for would-be home buyers.
Thank you so much, Paul. Today is the first step in creating a home protection period right here in British Columbia, and there is certainly more work to do. The specific length of time and other parameters will be outlined in the coming regulations after we hear more advice from BCFSA based on their work to consult with the real estate sector. That advice is forthcoming, and I can say broadly that I want to make sure that the homeowner protection period gives people adequate time for due diligence, while at the same time giving sellers and their agents the certainty that they need to close their sales. I have asked BCFSA to also review other possible measures that have been raised in the past by those in the industry and those looking for homes, including looking at alternatives to the blind bidding system, new rules around home inspections, and other ideas. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. Our first question today comes from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Minister, you announced this proposed amendment back in early November, so it's been almost 5 months. There was supposed to be consultation then. We're now heading into the busiest time of the year for real estate. I'm wondering why you haven't got that consultation piece out of the way and when people can expect to see this change actually enforced.
Thanks for that question, Justine. So the consultation got underway almost immediately when we put this together. My understanding is that the consultation is complete, and I'm waiting for the report. I should have it shortly, and that will inform the regulations. So that we'll get the legislation done, and I hope to, as quickly as we possibly can, get the regulations done as well.
Justine, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thanks. We do have some experience, I guess, with this pre-construction condominiums. So I'm wondering if you can tell us what we learned from that. How often do people actually invoke this opportunity to back out of a deal?
That's the right of rescission that currently exists with pre-construction, and that's a 7-day right of rescission. And that's work that we've asked the BCFSA as well to sort of take a look to see how often it gets used. So that's what I expect to see that as well in the report. And that will help inform us about what it is that people need when it's any other kind of transaction.
Next question goes to Rob Shaw, Check News.
Minister, in the bill, there's a reference to Cabinet's regulations maybe later charging a purchaser in some way. They have to pay the seller an amount if they exercise this right of rescission. Is that a possibility here, that you end up with a cooling off period in which the person has to pay the seller some money to get out?
So that's part of the right of rescission, and we've certainly heard some concerns expressed around people putting in multiple offers on multiple properties simultaneously. And so we've certainly heard that there may need to be some ability to put in a penalty for doing multiple offers. And so that's part of what we've asked the BCFSA to look at, if there should be and what the amount should be.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
And could you explain the reference to maybe that there might need to be different days by region in the province, that depending on the market, you could have a cooling off period, and I'm not going to call it right of recession, but a cooling off period that's shorter or longer depending on the market in BC and how you might use that?
So, you know, the British Columbia as a large province has different housing markets where things might be very active in South Island or perhaps Lower Mainland. They might not be particularly active in the North, and you might not need the same consumer protections in the same way. And so providing some flexibility. We also know that providing flexibility around regions, but also recognizing that markets change. And so having regulation helps us sort of adapt so that we can be responsive as a government. And again, to protect consumers. And as our Paul and Helen talked about, what happens when you have an overheated or very, very active market, and the pressure to make decisions is put on when there's not that kind of space, when there's so much activity happening.
Next question comes from Mary Cranston, CTV.
Hi, Minister. What about blind bidding? Is the province considering an end to that? I know lots of first-time home buyers I've spoken to said it would be nice to know what their competition is offering so they're not going in blind.
I've heard that as well, and that's why we've asked the BCFSA to also look at blind bidding as part of the consultation. I look forward to getting that report shortly, and we'll take a look to see what they have to say.
Mary, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Would the province ever consider a tax similar to Singapore, where people have to buy or people have to pay 15 or 17%, if they want to buy a second property?
We are, firing on all cylinders when it comes to housing affordability. I meet regularly with the Minister of Housing to identify, what more we can do as a government. We've been very active on this file. I was the previous housing minister, and looking to find ways to make sure that we have the kind of housing that people need, that people can afford, and that meet their needs. And we're continuing to do that work.
Next question comes from Dirk Meissner, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. Do you think in this amended law, when it comes in, there'll be a possibility of a buyer or a seller saying, hey, why don't we drop this protection plan and you can have the house?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch the tail end of that question, Dirk.
Can a seller or a buyer decide to waive the property protection plan once you have it in and complete a deal?
Well, the idea is to not allow that. I mean, right now people are doing that, and what we're saying is that buyers, have the right for that protection. And we want to encourage people to make use of that so that they can get the inspection. We've heard, from Helen around sort of what happens to buyers when they don't feel like they have the space to do their due diligence. And I have confidence that buyers will want to take advantage of that.
Dirk, do you have a follow-up?
Sure. What does this do for housing affordability?
The intent of this is not to address housing affordability directly. It's really about protecting home buyers and making sure that their needs can be met during a highly active market. And again, recognizing that there have been, frankly, what I've heard are horror stories of people making purchases, the biggest financial decision of their life, only to discover that it needs hundreds of thousands of more dollars because it's not livable, and it needs significant work, and they weren't aware of that because they felt so pressured to waive a home inspection. And so with this legislation, there is the time built into the transaction where they have the right to get that inspection.
We have time for one more question today. We'll go to Andrew Duffy, Times columnist.
Minister, should we be surprised at all that you've announced that there will be a cooling off period before the BC FSA report is released?
We always knew. I mean, of course, legislation takes a bit of time, so we've introduced it into the House. In the meantime, the BCFSA, we know, has completed their consultation, and I hope to get their report shortly. It will move through the House, and we'll certainly at the same time be able to review the report and bring in the regulations. So I'm expecting that we'll be able to do this very quickly, both component parts.
Do you have a follow-up, Andrew?
Yeah, given that the Attorney General will be introducing legislation or making some changes in the fall to force municipalities to work on the supply side. And I know Justine alluded to this earlier, but you didn't really answer the question. When do you expect to be able to enact this?
To enact this particular piece of legislation, we hope to be able to enact it at some point this spring.
Thank you very much, everyone. That concludes today's availability.